Hello, it's your girl Marcie Thomas, and I am so excited to be here with you for another episode of the BGC Book Club. So come on in the room and get ready to sit down and just really dive into this great conversation that I had with one of our international sisters who is really doing great things in the world of literature and so many other things. And I've been waiting to have her here for a while, so I'm so excited that we're going to have this conversation and be able to get into all of the wonderful things that she is doing. So if you haven't watched this before, we've been around for about 4 years, just interviewing Black women who tell stories by, for, and about us, and not just for us here in the United States, because I'm coming to you from Atlanta, but all around the world. And tonight is no exception. So our special guest is Nigerian-American author Lola Akinmádé Åkerström, who is an award-winning author, speaker, and photographer. Her work has been featured in National Geographic, BBC, CNN, The Guardian, Sunday Times Travel, The Telegraph, New York Times, Travel and Leisure, and so much more. In addition to contributing with her photography, she is the author of several books, including the book Due North, the best-selling Lagom, The Swedish Secret of Living Well, and the critically acclaimed In Every Mirror She's Black, and the NAACP Image Award nominated Everything Is Not Enough. So I could say so many things about Lola, but I don't want to belabor that. I want to bring this beautiful and brilliant sister into the space to talk about her work. So without any further delay, let's welcome Lola to the BGC Book Club. Welcome.
Hello, so excited and happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, yes. And I've been waiting for a while. You know, it's the whole thing of you're actually based in Sweden and me being here in the US. So just making that connection. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule because you have a lot going on. So first of all, I just really want to congratulate you on your work.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been incredible journey so far.
Yes, yeah. So I guess first question for you is how do you find time to do all of this? Because you're doing all this wonderful, photography and
Yes.
contributing to so many different organizations, as well as running your own business, as well as writing best-selling, award-winning books. How do you find time to do all of that, Lola?
You know what? I mean, obviously having just an incredible community around me, but honestly, once you are plugged into your purpose, once you know what you're meant to be doing, it comes easier. It really does. And I always say I'm a storyteller. And so the platform I choose is irrelevant, right? It's like,
Mm.
I want to tell a story. What's the best way to get this story out? Oh, maybe a photography project. Maybe that might be stronger. Maybe that might tell the story better. Or I need to tackle a social issue, but I need to do it in a way that will bring people along. Maybe fiction. Then I
Mm-hmm.
can put them in the shoes of characters and take them along, right? Or if I'm pissed about something, then okay, I need to write an opinion piece for a New York Times about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is, you know, once you are kind of connected into what you really want to be doing, what you want to say, you're going to find time. That's what people always say is like, if you really care about something, if you really care about going to the gym, you will find time,
Right.
to go to it. So that is it. We all have time. We know how to find it
Right.
when it's something that means so much to us.
Yes, that is true. Because when you just said that, I felt a little convicted about going to the gym.
I've convicted myself too, it's not just for me.
But yes, that's so true because, as many may know who watch, I do have a day job as well as reading books and having opportunities to talk to wonderful people like you, Lola, and still other things outside of that. So you are so right. So, being that you, as you said, you write opinion pieces, you do, your photography work, you teach other people about photography, all these different things. But what I want to know is what drew you to start writing these two wonderful books, which they are in tandem with one another, starting with In Every Mirror She's Black, and then Everything Is Not Enough. But what was it that drew you to these characters and wanted to tell these wonderful
Mm,
stories in particular?
absolutely. So I have been living in Sweden for about 14 years now.
Okay.
And before I started working as a travel writer and kind of nonfiction, um, I used to write fiction as a teenager. So I used to write lots of short stories. And so as an adult, I wanted to go back to that. Like, oh, I loved fiction. Fiction was my first love. How can I
Mm-hmm.
get back to that? But I was struggling. And then I realized the stories I wrote back then have nothing to do with my reality today, right? That was
Mm,
all fantasy. I could not connect, I could not rewrite. And so I started looking closer to my own lived experiences. I said, well, I'm a Black woman who has moved from the US to Sweden. I know a
mm-hmm.
lot of Black women here across the different socioeconomic skills, from the Britneys to the Monas. Uh, how does society treat me? How do I feel I can stop surviving and start thriving? And that's when I started
Mm,
looking closer to my kind of lived experiences, to the one people that I've met, even with Mona, spending time at a refugee center, working on a photography project. That
mm-hmm.
was when I started saying, you know what, I need to write more about this place. There
Right.
aren't that many stories, about the Black experience in the Nordics. And the Nordics are kind of like the last, I say it's the last bastion of whiteness, pure whiteness,
Mm,
in the world,
okay.
you know. So what does it feel like to be quite a minority? Yeah. And so I knew that, okay, before the characters, what are the social issues I wanted to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
And there were three of them.
Right.
I wanted to talk about career, I wanted to talk about class, and I wanted to talk about culture, and that's where the characters came. So I built Kemi to tackle career, Brittany to tackle class, and then Mona to tackle culture.
Wow, and you did such a fine job. So, for anyone who hasn't read these books yet, I definitely suggest I want to show them to you again. And actually, this one's coming out in paperback at the beginning of
Yes.
October. So, if you don't, want the hardback, or if you don't listen to it, because it is also available on audio, there is a paperback coming out shortly. But this is the second one and the first one. First of all, they're both beautiful books, and I tried to
Thank
match up
you.
a little bit. You see my
I know,
outfit.
I love it. I see beautiful. I love it. Love
I
it.
tried to do that, but yes, it's just that the stories are just so well told, and
Mm,
they do piggyback on one another. So I would suggest that you would read In Every Mirror She's Black first, and then pick up Everything Is Not Enough. But you are so correct in telling those stories. It really introduced me to another world. And that's why I love having people like you come on and talk about that,
mm,
because I was telling my best friend that I was talking to you today, and she's
mm.
like, I didn't know Black people lived over there in Sweden. I'm like, we're some of
You
everywhere.
see, we're everywhere. And this is exactly why I'm writing the stories. Exactly why. Exactly why.
Yes, but just to see these different women, and even though there are Black women in these places, there are things that are similar, and then there are things that are very different about their experiences
Yes,
as well. Just the same as us in America, we are not a monolith.
exactly.
Everybody has a different
Exactly.
story.
Absolutely. But I also wanted to show kind of just all the different nuances of the Black experience. I know a lot of my readers that read the first book, In Every Mirror She's Black, were quite frustrated with the characters. They're like, well, these are not strong Black women. What are they doing? Girl, get your ass back, all this. Like they were really frustrated.
Right.
And those were good emotions to have, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
what I wanted to do was, I wanted to create space for us to be messy,
Mm-hmm.
as because society demands so much of us as Black women to be always strong. We
Right.
cannot make mistakes. We have to always be on our game. And even when we make mistakes, those mistakes aren't as forgivable
That's
as
true.
others. And so with the first book, what I wanted to do was first to give the women space to just be messy, to show, like, what, they want ambition, they want love, lust, to be seen, to be taken care of, just all the emotions that other genre and other women get a lot of space to just be, right?
Right.
I always think of like a Bridget Jones's Diary, where people, they
Right.
can just be messy, we still don't get a lot of that space. And so I wanted to do that. And I wanted to do it in a place where it was a bit more foreign, you
Mm-hmm.
know, where there are so many women here that feel like we're just treated as a monolith. Oh, you're black, everybody's just the same.
Right.
So I wanted to also give the women the privilege of being individuals
Mm-hmm.
so that by the end of the book, if Muna makes a mistake, we don't say, well, we know how all black women are, Kemi's going to make the same mistake. No, we
Right.
see them as people, as individuals. And then with the second book, what I wanted to do was the second book is more about the reader
Yes.
than the character. So it's about what's the reader's capacity for grace, right?
Mm.
What's the reader's capacity for grace? Because remember, I'm giving this woman space to make mistakes so they can
Yes.
grow and develop as
Mhm.
individuals so they can self actualize.
Mm.
Second book is helping them on their way towards self actualizing with lots of stumbling blocks. So
Yes.
now, as readers, are we going to give them space and grace to be like, you know what, they're being human, they're trying to figure it out, they're trying to evolve and to grow as individuals, or do we immediately shut them down with judgment?
Right. I love that you said that because grace is a thing and it's not always offered. We want it
Yes.
when it's us. Please have grace. Please forgive me. Please understand me.
Yes.
But when it's somebody else, you be like, I can't believe
Yes.
that she did
Exactly.
X, Y,
Exactly.
and Z.
Yes. Yes.
So let's dive in a little bit to like the lead characters because of course we see them, throughout the both books and
Mm.
I just really loved watching their evolution. And well, first of all, before we get into who they were, when you started this process, did you realize you were going to write two books or did the second book come on the heels of the success of the first?
So I actually was already writing the second book. I was actually about 60% into the second book as a way to take my mind off of the first book because we couldn't sell the first book.
Ah, okay.
So
Okay.
the first book had already had over 80, like 70, 80 rejections. We just
Oh,
stopped
wow.
counting. And so while we were still trying to sell it, I was like, you know what, these women's stories don't end there. Let me just keep writing it and writing it and writing. So
Wow.
that I had so that the second was already kind of almost done
Mm.
when we sold the first one. And
Wow.
in an ideal world, what I would have loved was for it to be just one big thick volume, one
Gotcha.
and two together.
Right.
But the publishing industry exactly just wants thick, big, kind of epic in every white
Right.
black book. So that would have been my dream, right? But
Right.
the publishing industry, because it's expensive to publish,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're a well-known author that's they know that they're going to be able to sell your 800 page book,
Right.
they usually don't do that for
Mm-hmm.
debut novelists. So it doesn't
Mm.
matter what my experience was, it doesn't matter that I'm international bestseller in other fields. If you're a debut novelist bringing an 800 page book to
Right.
a new publisher, they usually don't take that risk.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. But I love that story though. So for anybody who
Yeah.
watches this who might be thinking about writing, if you've got, 800, thousand page book, realize you better break that down a little bit. So
Yes.
so
Yeah.
that's good to know. But I'm gonna be honest with you, Lola, the whole time I was reading slash listening, because I did a little bit of both. And just sidebar, the audios are really great as well. So and for
Yeah.
those who don't like to read physical books, please pick up the audios as well. But I kept thinking, series, this should be a series. This is so good. This should be a series. So I don't know if that's in the works, but if it's not, I'm putting it out there.
Yes. Well, let's just say we'll keep manifesting. Keep
Yes, we'll keep
manifesting.
manifesting. We will definitely do that. But, we've already kind of mentioned there are like three main characters, and we actually get introduced to a fourth as well, but we'll stick with the
Yes.
main three for right now. But we have
Yes.
Kimmy, who is well, tell us a little bit about her because she is like the American who winds up
Yeah.
in Sweden. So tell us a little bit about her story.
Absolutely. So Kemi is her roots are originally from Nigeria, and so she kind of moved to the US to go to college and kind of work there. So she's the voice of like a naturalized immigrant
Mm-hmm.
who is, kind of working and trying to live the American dream that's been sold. And so she is a, power woman. She's worked hard in her career. She's climbed up, but she also has a lot of insecurities. Her personal life hasn't been as smooth. And so what I wanted to show was a very relatable story. There are so many powerful, professional boss ladies, Black women that are just killing it in their fields, wherever they are, but still looking for that one partner, the
Mm-hmm.
right partner for them. And so I wanted to create that Kemi character. And then with Brittany, she has Jamaican roots, but she was born in the US. She's,
Yes.
African American, absolutely drop dead gorgeous, former model, turned flight attendant. And so with that character, she was tired of serving people. She had spent 20 years serving
Mm-hmm.
people in first and business class with a smile on her face, even
Right.
when they're being rude. So
Right.
she wanted to be taken care of. And so she ended up being a kind of a sitting duck when the guy came
Mm-hmm.
in to take care of her because
Right.
she just wanted, she was done serving people, right? And then with Muna, there are so many Munas in the world,
Yes.
especially in the Nordics. We don't hear a lot of their stories in Europe. Many migrants, their boats capsizing on their way to Europe. And so I wanted to show that narrative in a Muna story where this is a refugee that has come to society and has done every single thing society said she must do
Mm-hmm.
to be accepted and is still not being accepted. So
Mm.
I wanted to, so those were all the narratives I wanted to share.
Yes, and the thing of it, as you just reiterated, that there is a through line of women not being accepted as Black women.
Yes.
Whether
Yes.
it is their career or, well, career and, sometimes living a lifestyle that might be different from the lifestyle they really want to live because they have to survive.
Yes.
So that is something really that's universal, Lola, if I think about it.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
things that we deal with. So yes, this may be taking place in Sweden, and there are some things that are very specific to being there, but really it's a universal story. Do you think that's what has helped it become so successful and popular with readers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, and even just beyond Black women, the letters I get are from like sometimes Indian men saying, I see
Mm-hmm.
myself in these characters. I'm like, oh, right. But it's because the characters have become human, right?
Mm-hmm.
Society creates caricatures of us Black women
Yes.
so that when they create a caricature, then it's very easy to dehumanize a caricature because you
Mm-hmm.
cannot connect. But once you humanize, then we see each other and see the vulnerabilities and realize the same feelings of trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be acknowledged, loneliness, feeling like I'm enough. It's universal. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why the book, I believe, has been resonating because I wrote it. The prose is very straightforward prose, it's very
Mm-hmm.
raw.
Mm-hmm.
And that was by choice
Right.
because I wanted people to walk in the shoes
Mm-hmm.
of these women. And that is because, I work as a travel writer
Yes.
and I don't tell you, hey, go to Rome. Rome is beautiful with my words. I
Mm-hmm.
actually have to show you through my words why Rome is beautiful so that
Right.
you reading my words make the decision to go to Rome yourself. So bringing you and putting you in my feet and in my shoes. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I did with this book. And that's why it resonated because regardless of, just across lots of different groups, it's because I brought people to kind of walk in the shoes of the women so that by the end of the book, the reader is either angry, frustrated,
Right.
tired, mad at the author versus complimenting my prose,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Right.
that for me is the success is if the reader is angry that I did something to a character, I made a character make bad decisions, then my work as an author has been done because that character feels like a person.
Yes,
But
they
even at the
definitely
end of
felt
the
like.
book, yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah,
definitely felt like people to me. That's why, I was so glad that I put them together, versus having to like wait,
yes,
read one
yes,
and then
yes,
wait, like what's
yes,
next, sort of thing.
yes,
But I'm
yes,
thinking about Kimmy. One of the things that I loved about her, early on is that we see this woman that, yes, she's struggling, with relationships and things like that. Like
mm,
most professional Black women who are already partnered are going
yes,
to tell you that
yes,
that is a challenge and that is a struggle for a lot of different reasons. But what I liked about her is that she made a decision that there was an opportunity that was presented to her, and she was not so, what should I say, married to being in one space, that she was
yes,
willing to take a chance. And sometimes that's not
mm,
something that people are willing to do. They will
yes,
stay
because
in
it's
what's
scary.
familiar, the devil
Mm,
so to speak.
yes, yes, no, absolutely, it's very scary. It's scary to dive head first into the unknown, but you
Hmm.
have to do it with faith and say,
Hmm.
you know what, at the other side, someone is going to catch me. I hope there is something that's going to catch me on the other side. And I think maybe Kemi as a character didn't get enough credit for doing that air dive, even though she's one of the messiest characters in the book.
She
She's very
is.
super messy,
Yes.
super messy. But it takes a lot to be vulnerable and go to a place and kind of almost start from scratch, even though she didn't really start from scratch, but they brought her in,
Right.
gave her like a fantastic, they set her up. Most people don't get that privilege of being set up that way.
Right.
They move and have to kind of figure their way around. But it's still very daunting. It's still very daunting coming from a place where you've been always at the upper ground,
Right.
the upper, the advantage, and then coming to a place where you are now at a disadvantage because you
Right.
don't know the language. So,
Right. Right. So I do have to ask this because you yourself have moved.
yes,
are
yes,
any
yes.
of the things that any of the characters, based upon some of your own experiences, just in making
Mm.
that type of transition? Not the stuff
Yeah,
they
no,
did, because
absolutely.
you don't even
No,
know
no,
that.
no, absolutely. No, absolutely. And you know what's so funny? Because many readers think Kemi is based on me or my life or my
Mm.
journey. In fact, I was at a book club and somebody and they were saying, "So Kemi, tell us about." I'm like, "I'm not Kemi. Who is Kemi?"
I'm Lola.
No, exactly. No, but the thing is that all the women have bits and pieces of my life, and all of them don't. Sorry, it's the connection. It's my sorry. No, it's my son. Is trying to get the phone, but unfortunately, I'm on the.
Hey, son.
I know it's on. I see that's our life, but don't take it away because it's the connection. That's life. So no, but what I was gonna say was all the ladies, they are bits and pieces of me, but they're also not me. So they're like
Right.
a collection of all sorts of different women and different experiences and different souls I've kind of met along the way. So for example, Kemi, I made a Nigerian American because I am Nigerian American, so it's
Right.
easy for me to root her culturally. So
Hmm.
I can work in a lot of the pressures that that kind of
Yes.
generation gets home where like this through the sister where it's like marry somebody on your level, don't do this, don't I
Right.
can write to that. Brittany, again, even though she was a very difficult character for me to write, she lived in Alexandria, Virginia. I lived in Alexandria, Virginia. That route, the
Hmm.
British Airways route from London to DC and back to Sweden, that's my route. I take it up.
Okay.
You know, and then with Muna, even though Muna is very different from me, Muna is actually the character that's closest to me
Okay.
because Muna was even though I wasn't a refugee when I moved to the US,
Right.
she was my 15-year-old self, 15, 16, because I
Gotcha.
moved very young and my first job was as a janitor, you
Okay.
know, and I was trying to find belonging, coming with an identity, saying, but nobody's seeing me, this is who I am. And I was quite young. And so I was excluded a lot and just kind of sidelined. And so Muna was my kind of younger self.
Okay.
But the difference is I kind of found community. I was grateful to find community and that helped me through that process,
Okay.
of trying to integrate. So all of the women are me, but not me, and lots of
Right.
their other people, they're not people, but just bits and pieces.
Right. Well, I love that because just knowing, who you are and where you came from, I'm like, there's got to be some things that she just knows just from her own experience.
Yes.
Not the stuff that they did, because some of the stuff they did was wild, but just but just the experiences of being a Black
Exactly.
woman and navigating in
Mm,
all of these different spaces and moving to another
yes.
country and especially a country where you don't necessarily see a lot of Black people. So with that
Yes.
point in mind, in Sweden or in Nordic countries, what is about the percentage? Like 1 or 2%? I
So
mean, I'm sure it's probably not a lot.
it's still not a lot, but I'll say just in terms of foreign, I'll say foreign born, and that includes other ethnicities and other
Right.
backgrounds. It's 35%.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
it's a big chunk. So one in every three person has at
Okay.
least one parent that's born somewhere else, at least
Got it.
one. So it's a lot more diverse.
Okay.
But then, and then I think the on the black side is about 300,000.
Okay.
So it's still not as much. I think it's definitely less than a million. You
Right.
know, in Sweden, and
Got
then
it.
of course all the different Nordic countries. So it's still not a lot, but enough to not be ignored, right?
Right. Right. And that's the
Where
thing,
our
to
yes,
not be ignored. Because just
yes,
a little bit about, like, with Kimmy, I found it interesting because it also ties into something we've been dealing with here in the US, the whole thing of diversity and inclusion. So she kind of gets
yes,
pulled into things like, she's a
yes.
diversity hire.
Yeah, pretty much she was,
Pretty much what
and
she is.
I think what frustrated Kemi is um, Kemi has the qualifications on paper, right? And so when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and then people on the other side come and say, well, they must be qualified. Well, we can't just hire them. And I'm like, do you know black and brown people have had to work four times as hard,
Come on now.
get double, three times, four times the degrees? Each time I go to a space and I see a black or brown woman or man in a room and they're the only one there, chances are they're the smartest person in the room. To be
Mm-hmm.
able to have gotten into that room, just how much they've had to work.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear the meritocracy argument and they say, well, you can't just hire her just because she's brown, it cheapens the dialogue discourse.
Right.
It's very condescending because
Yes.
chances are she is the smartest. She's actually the smartest
She
person
knows more than you
in
do.
the room. She actually does. And
Yes.
she has the perspective, being marginalized, you see all around as well, and you bring that perspective in. So that is, I think, with Kemi's character, the frustration is where they just kind of put her as a figurehead, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, I could be running this whole company. What are you guys doing, right?
Right.
And so I wanted to tease out that frustration because I know a lot of Black women uh, have to deal with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then with Brittany Ray, or Brittany, she's called, she's the
Yes,
American and who's wanting this different life because she, had some good opportunities at an earlier age and stage, and some things happen, which you have to read the book to find out. Some things
yes,
happen that, have her to go in a different direction. And then she finds herself in a situation where, she's being pursued, you know,
yes,
by Yanni, who is,
yes,
excuse me,
yes,
who is Swedish. And I
yes,
found that, I need my water too. I found that interesting because sometimes that does happen where, a Black woman can be pursued for a variety of
yes,
reasons. And I mean, you don't shy away from it. Let's just say, put it out there, being fetishized for being a Black
yes,
woman
yes,
and looking
yes,
how she looks and these sorts of things. So I found that to be a different dynamic as well, and the choices that
yeah.
she made, that some of us might be like, well, why would she do that, understanding
Well,
X, Y, and Z.
Yes, no, absolutely. And Britney is a very complex character because what I wanted to talk about socially through Britney's character is this narrative in Europe that says we don't see color,
Mm,
look, we're all interracial, we marry, black women, we don't care. But that same black women, they wouldn't listen to her as their boss in the office, right?
right.
So there's a very different dynamic. At least in the US, I can be a black woman CEO. There
Mm-hmm.
might be some people still trying to be like, she saw this, but they will still listen to me as the CEO. In
Mm-hmm.
Europe, there are not that many black women CEOs. We're still not there yet. And not because they're not smart women, it's because the
Right.
society is set up where it's like you will always be second place.
Hmm.
And yes, I can marry you, I can, do whatever I want with you, but then to take directions from you as my boss, ha 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 ha.
Right.
Europe is not there. So I wanted to show that, but then also with Britney's character, there are many things I wanted to show that if we do not face the issues like our past, it's
Mm-hmm.
very difficult, it's traumatic. It can be very traumatic to face things that happened in the past. But if we don't, then chances of it happening again and again
Right.
are higher. And
Right.
that's why we say when people are abused and we say, why did she go back? Or she found somebody similar. Same thing you said, the devil you know, and the devil you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that was one with Britney's character where it made her also more susceptible to something similar. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like I said, she's tired of serving people. So she was tired of serving people. She was like, you know what? I'm beautiful. I'm this. I just want to live the luxe life, the bougie life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. And she deserves it. But I think she wanted to stop surviving. She just wanted to thrive,
Mm-hmm.
wrapped with the most privileged of privileges in society. That's what she wanted. And what made Yoni so attractive to her, because she had Jamal, she had a great guy, right?
Right.
But but what made Yoni um attractive to her was this was a guy who was obsessed with taking care of her. And
Mm-hmm.
I also put him and this is not a big spoiler. I think readers as they read will know that he is on the spectrum,
Right.
on some spots. So it's not a big spoiler, even though I don't say it, but he is on it. And so I was able to show that aspect of
Right.
using his own unique quirks to be able to chase Brittany. So that's also
Mm-hmm.
normalizing him,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yes, that was definitely a very complex story, just learning about
yes,
him, his family, what was going on there, how he was relating to Brittany and just all of that. I'm like, wow. And just to see that and to think that sometimes a person does get tired. I mean, let's just be real, Lola. Sometimes I get tired, but like, who's gonna come take care of me?
I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. And that's also one thing I always tell readers, like, no, I don't have the kind like Yoni in my life because even though I moved to Sweden, it wasn't like a Yoni von Lundin situation or Yoni money. I would have loved that kind of money, but
Right,
it's
right.
not that situation, you know. But I get that from readers too, because sometimes people are just tired of struggling and surviving every day. And like, you know what? I will pick my battles. I will pick what I can. I will rather go like being a ivory tower surrounded by just a Lux life. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to care about anything else. And there are people here that do that actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I also wanted to write about that kind of narrative as well, because there are some women that you come here, you're tired of surviving, so you're going to rely, on whatever makes you feel beautiful and different. And
Mm-hmm.
once you move into a society where everybody kind of looks more or less the same, and then you come in looking like this beautiful chocolate muffin, you then that's another privilege that some women say, you know what, I don't mind being fetishized. I want it.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me special.
Right.
So it's a very complex um, thing, and that's why this book just it's so many triggers with this book because it's really real.
It is real. It's real, and just taking some of the same situations and just changing the place of where it is.
Yes,
But you've seen things like this happen, because as
yes,
a woman, just to think of, okay, if I say I want to be taken care of, or I want to be put on a pedestal, there are other things that go along with that that maybe don't sit
yes,
well with me. And so we do,
exactly.
kind of watch Brittany go through that, a thing of losing yourself in that. And maybe,
Yes,
like, hey, there's more to me than just being, this hot
yes,
chocolate, as you call it. There's
yes,
more to me
yes,
than that,
yeah,
but I'm
exactly.
only
Yes,
seen as that, so
yes,
that's something. And then, of course, with Muna, her being a
mm,
refugee, her whole situation is just different because being a
mm,
refugee and coming into the country without having the same privileges that the other two
yes,
characters had.
yes, absolutely. And what I also wanted to show is that it's not a suffering Olympics, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when and I want to speak to this because and it's not giving anything away, but this month is like suicide awareness month. We help
Yes.
people in different communities. And when somebody is very wealthy or they have a lot of privileges but they are unhappy, and
Mm-hmm.
society says, what are you complaining about? So they cannot
Mm-hmm.
voice their sadness. That's when society gets shocked when something
Mm-hmm.
happens. I'm like, what? This
Right.
celebrity, he had everything, she had
Right.
everything, right?
Right. Right.
And so what I wanted to show is that all of their struggles are valid. Yes, there
Mm-hmm.
is perspective, but we need to be able to speak about all the struggles on different levels. So with Muna, I wanted to show the real struggle of
Right.
refugees tr- coming with nothing, losing family, trying to find a space where they
Mm-hmm.
can just feel seen. Muna's goals are little. She just wants to have family and feel
Right.
safe,
Right.
And then once she feels safe, then she can then start thinking, could I run my own business? Could I? And that's where the Maslow hierarchy of needs come in. And I don't know if yeah.
I'm
So
familiar
it's
with
that
it.
triangle.
Yes.
It's that
Very familiar.
triangle where everything has, your physiological needs at the bottom line, then the safety. And so I'm showing them all at different stages. So
Mm-hmm.
Kemi on that, Muna is trying to just get a physiological, can I have food, water, shelter,
Mm.
then get to safety. Kemi is already past all that, where
Right.
she's now into her interest and then how can I
Mm-hmm.
self-actualize to be like an Oprah? She's good in
Right.
speaking, you know, you know, and then Brittany is just stuck on the safety where she's just safe. She's
Right.
cushioned in the safest bubble, but has stopped self-actualizing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem
Right.
with Europe is when you come from struggle,
Mm-hmm.
Europe in many ways is actually quite comfortable than the US in terms of, you get a year and a half maternity leave, the government takes it. There's some things that makes it more comfortable, and then people get stuck there. They
Mm-hmm.
get stuck there and then they can't complain, right? Because they feel like, well, I'm getting all this stuff, then how dare I self-actualize? How dare I
Hmm.
want to become the CEO of IKEA or Ericsson or any of those big companies? I
Right.
should just stay here. And so
Mm.
that's a lot of narratives I'm breaking and challenging because I'm like, why can't you not then strive more
Right.
than that if that's
Right.
what you want to do, right? So it's so with Muna, I just wanted to show the real struggle of refugees. And like I said, I spent a year and a half visiting an asylum center, working
Okay.
on a photography project, with the asylees, and had so many stories. So
Hmm. And it's important to tell those stories because it humanizes, those people, the people who are in that situation. Because we think
yes,
of here in America, I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric that gets thrown around about certain
yes.
groups
Oh
of
my
people.
goodness.
which is just
Yes.
not true about those people.
Yes.
But
Yes.
when you can like actually read a story or hear a real story and like get to see what that person is actually experiencing, you know, the good, the bad, and the in between, it humanizes them, and so that's what
Yes.
makes her story so important. And yeah, there's some things in there that you know are sad that you have to read the book
Mm.
to see what
Yes.
happens with
Yes.
her. But
Yes.
it's just real when a person is kind of thrust into a situation where everything that they knew and everyone that they loved is no longer in their life, and they have
Mm.
to kind of start from the bottom and build.
Mm. Mm.
That's something.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so that is in the first book. So for those who haven't read it yet, that should be enough to get you going. And then,
Mm.
you know, it ends in a way that you're like, well, what's next? Well, what about these
Exactly.
characters? And as Lola's
Yes.
already said, you know, she was, you know, 60% through the second book when the
Yeah.
first one came out. So
Yes.
everything is not enough, is the second book where we kind of pick up where we left off and we see what happens with these three characters in this
Mm.
book. And this is where, like you said, it gets really messy in
Yes.
this one.
Yes. Yes.
Because before the first one's kind of the introduction, we see what they're going
Yes.
through, their, you know, and all that sort of thing. But it gets really messy in this one.
Yes.
So
Yes. No, I say it got messy enough for an NAACP nomination. When it
yes,
got that messy.
yes, yes, we like drama.
It's a real drama.
There's a lot of
So
drama going
a
on
lot of
in
drama.
there. So, you know,
Yes.
and we also get introduced to a fourth character. Well, she's introduced in the first book, but we really get to learn
Yes.
more about Yasmin in the second book.
Yes.
So let's start with her because since we
Yes.
didn't learn as much about her in the first book, but she is a character that she has yet a different story. So how
Yes.
important was it for you to introduce her and show yet another perspective of women of
Absolutely.
color who may end up in Sweden and other nations?
Yeah, absolutely. And with Yasmin, I mean, this is not a spoiler. It's on the very first page. I wanted to tackle trafficking in Europe. It's a big
Mhm.
issue when it comes to Black women, marginalized women, brown women. And I wanted to talk about that experience and how women can break away from that or how they end up in different places they don't choose based on
Mhm.
that. And so with that character, I wanted to show, okay, this is somebody that's reclaiming her body,
Right.
you know, taking it because I body has been taken from her in many ways, and now she's saying, you know what, I am now having ownership of my body now. I am going to now live life on my own terms, and my past will not define me, it will not shame me, you
Mm.
know, and I can grow from this. And so I wanted to bring Yasmin into this second book because she's feisty, you know, and I
Yes.
wanted to also show, you know, somebody that's like also checking the other two women as
Right.
well, you know, once they all kind of orbit each other. And my favorite character to write in both
Hmm.
books is actually Yasmin's husband.
Oh,
So the husband,
really?
yes,
Really?
yeah, he's the Turkish guy.
Yes. And what made
So
him your favorite character to write?
because he was the most complex character to write.
Yes, he was.
So complex because I feel like everybody knows yeah, he's kind of character. You know, he
Hmm.
could be like a Turkish guy, Kurdish guy, Middle Eastern guy. On the one hand, super hardworking, you know, multiple business. On the other hand, he has some questionable views about women. On the one hand,
Right.
he's trying to take care of Muna by wrapping and making, you know, a food for her while still saying, "Leave me alone, you little witch." You know, like it's kind
Right.
of dichotomy, right? He's such a gray, gray,
Right.
messy person
Hmm.
was that became that way based on his experiences in life.
Right.
And so I wanted to show a guy and I wanted to talk about gangs and you know stuff like that. I wanted to
Mm.
touch on that because we always see the end results.
Right.
We don't see what makes people do things they do.
Right.
And he does things off the page. We don't know what he's doing off the page.
Right.
But when you see him on the page, he's loving Yasmin, is there with his son. Again, very questionable character, but you see
Hmm.
him as a passionate,
Mm-hmm.
husband and dad and trying to just figure out things out for his young family, right? So that's why that character is very, as an author, was very interesting to write and to create. Like I see him as a human being. Like I can hear his voice, see him as a person as well, like the other women. So, and I knew that to bring him in the second book is tied to Yasmin. I need to bring her and write a
Right.
story.
Right. And you, as you're saying that, like, that's so true. Yes, him as a character, but just thinking of people in our own lives that might be, they love us, family or
Hmm.
whatever, or friend, but then you're like,
Yeah,
there's some stuff over there that's a little bit shady about you.
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
They're still
especially,
basically a good person, a good person
yes,
that maybe has some not
yes,
so good ways about them, but we still love them
exactly.
nevertheless,
Yes,
and they'll still fight
yes,
to the death for their families and the ones that they love.
exactly, exactly. And the thing with the second book, and I think you probably noticed it as you read it, is the main theme is power and power dynamics.
Yes.
So it was the same thing with Kemi and the situationship. It was the same thing with Brittany and her husband, and then with Yasmin, and it's power dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, the power dynamics, and they do exist in all types of relationships because oftentimes we
Yes,
might think of it, at work or within our government or whatever the case may be. But even personally, there are definitely power dynamics that can play out in a lot of different
yes,
ways.
yes. And I wanted to show, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I wanted to show with Kemi's situation, if you meet somebody that is you feel like you guys are could actually we're actually on the same level intellectually, everything just vibe wise,
Mm-hmm.
then um that's why there was that conflict between those two characters, Kemi and
Mm.
that character, which will remain unnamed, right?
Right.
But the problem with power is it's also attractive.
Mm.
So that's why when you see somebody with a swagger, even though they may not be conventionally attractive, you're like, man, that guy is moving with confidence. With
Mm-hmm.
there's something about perceived power that can be attract, and this is just base human nature. I'm not talking about my own values. I'm just talking base
Right.
human nature. That power can be attractive and that can be potent, and two powerful people can be attracted to each other, even though they don't want to be, and it creates that tangle. And Malcolm, who is Kemi's friend in both books,
Right.
gives one of my favorite lines. He says, "What's the opposite of a white man with power in society?
Mm.
It's a black woman standing in her power. Because
Mm.
society says you, as a black woman, you are the least powerful. But then,
Right.
how dare you be strong? How
Mm.
dare you stand in your power? How dare you be all these things?" And then there is contention. And I always say, remember when Justice Ketanji Jackson was being
Yes.
sworn in, and when she sat in her power, and all the guys they were just swelling up. How dare
Yeah.
she
How
not
dare
be
she?
unfazed?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a very triggering image. Is you are supposed to be least in society, but yet you are sitting there with your head high,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in your power. That is why when a black woman is thriving, just the image alone triggers other people.
Ooh, child.
It just triggers a woman. A black woman she could be thriving, enjoying her life, manifesting the soft life, and somebody seeing her will have something to say. Oh, okay, yeah, well,
Right.
because we're not supposed to be doing that.
We're
Society
not
has said
supposed to
no,
be doing that.
we're not supposed to be doing that. So those are all the things, and that's why Britney's story is important.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay for her to thrive in luxury. I
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of readers that are not black that always have problems with Britney and Kemi, saying, why are they complaining? Don't they have enough?
Mm.
Don't they have enough? What are they complaining? What are they looking for?
Hmm.
Right. So,
And that would make sense that that you would get that from non-black women because they think, well, shoot, her life is better than those other ones over
yes,
there. So why should
yes,
she, why should she want more? Why should she be striving for the
Exactly.
best? Why should she
Exactly.
want the highest level job, president of the United States? I'm just saying.
Ex-
Why?
Exactly. Yeah, and she's gonna get it. She's gonna
Yes.
get it, but
Like
we
why?
don't have
Why?
wisdom.
Your
Yes.
VP isn't that good enough? Because we really didn't even want you to have that. But
Exactly.
yeah, so I mean that is a thing to think about. That yes,
Mm,
there some people are used to us being at the low end of the totem pole.
yes.
We're not as beautiful, even though they want to look
Yes.
like us. All these different
Exactly.
things that we have been as
Exactly.
Black women have been chastised or maligned for.
Yes.
Then once we
Yes.
decide to stand in that and be like, yes, I am beautiful, I'm curvy, and look at my braid.
Yes.
Hey,
Yes. Yes. No,
people don't
absolutely.
like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? This is, I told you that the first book had so many rejections. We
Mm-hmm.
also had a lot of rejections, from the UK and the US, other
Okay.
publishers outside of the Nordics, because the publishing industry is still mostly white women,
Yes.
and they weren't connecting, especially with Britney's story and Yoni. They
Mm,
said they could not connect with that particular story. And
because she's
for
a Black
and
woman and he's a white man
and yes, but also not only is he a white man, he's from the Nordics.
from the
And
Nordics.
like I told you, it's the last bastion of whiteness. It's like for them the epitome blonde, blue-eyed white guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then he chooses Britney.
Mm-hmm.
So these editors were saying, well, I'm sorry, we can't connect with this character. And I'm like, you the same editors that can connect with werewolves and vampires and aliens, oh my. Sometimes that's it from the woman's story, right? So it's so subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I needed to keep writing these stories. It's super raw and it's triggering across the board. So
Yes, just when you put it that way. But I mean, Black is beautiful no matter where it is. And there are going to be
yes,
people who are going to be, rightfully or wrongfully, because we see a little bit of both in the book. But there
yes,
are going to be people who are attracted to us and the things
yes,
that we have and that we carry. And so, but you're right, the industry in and of itself doesn't necessarily support stories that center us in that type of way. So that does make
yes.
a lot
In
of
a
sense.
complex way, in a complex, nuanced way. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But if it's, and I'm gonna just say it, this isn't live for those of you who watch it. But like if it's a slavery situation where it's dominant,
Yes.
a dominant
Yes.
situation, not so much
Yes.
where someone is actually desiring someone for love or
Yes.
those sorts of things.
Yes.
But if it's something else, then yes. But
Yes.
if it's, yeah,
Yeah. No, no, I get it. I get it. And you know what? I'm going to be writing a lot more books about women, mostly centered in Europe and the Nordics, because we need more stories. There's not a lot. I need to
right.
fill that space with more stories. And I will write more black joy, right? Just more
Mhm.
happiness, more chasing butterflies in fields. I will write that.
Right.
But the soil still needs to be fertilized and where the US is kind of decades ahead in that discussion and that
Mm,
discourse. That's why we can write books on the US side, Black Joy yeah, we cannot, I always say we cannot leapfrog the process. It
mm,
was painful in the US.
yeah.
Everybody saw it in the 60s, the 70s. We're not going to leapfrog it in Europe. We have to go through the same thing. And
Hmm.
that's what Europe is beginning to go through. And they're trying to say, okay, how can we just leapfrog to the, so that's why it's, yeah, lots of challenging times. So
Yes, yes. Well, I appreciate you, writing these stories because,
thank
as I
you.
say, as a Black American woman, I was in the military once, so I have been
Mm.
overseas.
Yes,
So I have
yes,
had, some European experiences and things like that. But it is important for us to see a world
yes,
outside of the world, for no matter where you live, it's good to see a world that looks different from the world that you live in. Because,
yes,
just like I mentioned earlier, my
absolutely.
friend was like, "What? There's Black people?" Yes.
Yes, exactly. And also it's to also to remind ourselves, even though we are struggling in different places or we're struggling in the US, there is still, if you as an American Black African American woman comes to Europe, you still have that privilege. There's still passport privilege that you
Mm,
have so there's still so many privileges based on context and based on where you are, you know. And so by sharing these stories, it also puts our struggles in perspective. It doesn't minimize our struggles,
Right.
but it shows, you know what? Let me just get my passport and move on out of, I'll go somewhere
Right.
else where I know, at least I don't have to always every day, you
Right.
know, struggle as much.
Right.
So just all these stories is really important to just show different voices and different experiences and just enrich the diaspora as well. So
Yes, yes. As you were saying that, it reminded me, speaking of my time being in Europe, and this was like years ago, but the fact that there is oftentimes a difference in the way a Black American is treated
yes,
versus a Black person from Africa or other parts
yes,
of the
yeah,
diaspora.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's what we call the passport privilege. The
Hmm.
passport privilege in Europe is if you're American, you still there is still, even though politics aside, the madness going on, that aside, there is still a positive um, connotation tied to the passport because it's a strong passport.
Hmm.
It is a strong passport, as strong as a European passport, right? So there's a difference there. And so that passport says I have options.
Mm.
That's what the passport says. I have options. And so when you come into a place with an American passport, and especially when you switch to your American English or accent, that
Hmm.
also gives you an advantage because then the
Mm.
locals are trying to, English is not their first language. So they're
Right.
trying to, so it almost flips the script a bit.
Hmm.
And that's why I have a lot of American friends. They know that privilege in Europe. And so they wrap it around the shoulders and be
Hmm.
like, and be like, I'm different, I'm this, oh, I'm American. So they wrap it. And many of them can stay decades in a place and not learn the language because it's like, I'm tired of struggling. This is one less struggle I'm going to add to my backpack as a Black woman, right? And I
Hmm.
get it. And that's why when I write, I don't write from a place of judgment. I write from a place of, I see you, I
Hmm.
see what you need to do to survive,
Right.
and I'm not judging you. But it's okay to just breathe and know that I see you wherever you are,
Right.
and we're going to keep talking about these issues. So,
Yes, that's beautiful. And that grace that we talked about at the top, that
yes,
level of
yes,
grace, because even,
yes,
I'll be honest, in reading both books at the end, yeah, there was stuff that happened. I'm like, ooh. But at the same
yes,
time, I did not judge those characters for making the choices that they made because I know that
yes,
Marcie is an imperfect person. And if you all could
yes.
dive into my life, you might be like, mm,
You're like, oh, like, I'll be like,
exactly. He's piping hot. But I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
it's just the truth, and but that
yes.
doesn't, just like with these characters, with me, with you, Lola. We're still
Mm,
good people. We're still, all these things at the core of who we
yes,
are. We're just figuring out life and making mistakes
yes,
along the way, and
yes,
Lord willing, being able to learn from those mistakes and to
yes,
continue
yes,
to navigate that hierarchy of needs and all those sorts of things where we
yes,
get to
yes,
the place where we're living our optimal lives. So
yeah,
I love seeing it. I love seeing it. But I do know that you have another book that's coming out in May,
yes,
that Bitter
yes. So,
Honey. So is it a
so it's
continuation or
called
is this something different?
so it's a totally standalone book. So you don't have to have read any of the other books to read it because it's historical fiction. It goes back to the 70s, absolutely standalone, but it has three characters from this book,
Mm,
and they are not any of the main characters, none of the women, not. So you might guess who they are, but this is historical fiction that follows a mother and a daughter.
okay.
And it follows a woman called Nancy in the 70s when she
Okay.
first moved to Sweden as a student. And then in the early 2000s, it follows her daughter Tina, who
Okay.
was a pop star, and so it's essentially the stories of how Nancy moved to Sweden, and then our daughter went from pop star to activist. And the book talks about identity
Mm-hmm.
because Tina is mixed, grew up in Sweden, talks about, they travel around. There's stint in the US, and it also talks about nationalism as well, right? So
All
it's a
right.
book that's very I this book out of the three books is my favorite so far.
Okay. Oh,
It's a
wow.
it's quite yeah, it's my favorite so far because lots of research, but also going back to history. And so it ties into so many historical events and things happening at the same time and all of that. So I'm super excited about this one. It comes out in May in the UK. And
Okay.
then this week we'll find out which month it comes out on the US side,
Okay.
but it shouldn't be
Okay.
too far. Yes,
All
but
right.
it's
Well,
I'm
I
super
told you at the top, we're not going to wait until
no, it's
we're
not
going
too
to get
far.
you earlier and have you come
Yes,
back next year, hopefully in summertime,
yes,
to
yes,
talk about the
absolutely.
other book.
But I don't want to say it's completely standalone, so it has really nothing to do with the other two books besides just a character from there. So you don't have to have read anything, the
Yeah, and
other
I'm
two. So
thinking, but I'll ask you offline, like, which one is it? I
exactly.
might know, but yes.
Yes,
But I'm looking forward to that because I enjoy these two so much. And
me too.
for those who haven't read In Every Mirror She's Black, I'm putting the names back up there again, or Everything Is Not Enough, I definitely would suggest that you get them. They're both
Thank you.
available in audio. This one, Everything Is Not Enough, will be available as a paperback on October 1st here. So
Yes,
you can get both if you wanted that, or check your local libraries and all that.
yes,
So
yes,
have them for your book clubs and things like that because it is a good story and you get to see it through. It doesn't just end on the one note.
yes,
Oh no, I'm not gonna say what the oh no
yes,
is for, but yeah, you get to kind of see the story play
yes,
out and really get to fall in love with, or maybe not, but at
yes.
least understand the characters, even if you don't fall in love with them.
Yes, yes, absolutely,
All
absolutely.
right. Well,
Thank
one
you so
last quick
much.
question because you have so many wonderful things going on, Lola. Just tell us a little bit about some of the things you're doing with your photography. Because don't you have an event coming up
Yes.
soon? You do a lot
Yeah,
of stuff
no,
with that.
absolutely. So I'm actually working on a really wonderful photography project called Afro Swede, and I'll
Mm.
send you the link because it's really cool. So on the word Afro, I have the Swedish umlauts on the word, and on the word Swede, I have the African intonations on
Ooh, I
Swede.
love it.
And what I'm doing is I'm calling it a visual celebration of both identities. So I'm photographing people with African roots who are also Swedes. And so what they do is they wear some elements from their African roots, and then we mix it with like Swedish traditional gear or like some Viking stuff. And then I photograph that to
I
say
love
that
it.
it's okay to be both, visibly be both. Because remember, your friend is saying, I didn't know there are Black people in Sweden.
Right.
There are many that were born and raised there. So that means their identity is being denied outside,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so this project is to really celebrate that. It's to celebrate integration, not assimilation, but integration. I am this, I am that, I am that, and all parts of these identities are me. So that's a lovely photography project I'm working on right now. So
I love it. I love it. And actually, your social media has been scrolling at the bottom. So if you go to Instagram and follow
yes,
Lola there, you will be able to see some of that. Because
yes.
did not want to deny you the opportunity to talk about your other work because you're doing so many
Thank
great
you.
things, and I
Yes,
just
thank
wanted to
you.
share that as well. So
Thank
everyone,
you.
thank you so much for watching. I definitely suggest that you grab a copy of both books. Follow Lola so you can see when her other works are coming out and all of that. And Lola, thank you again for joining
Thank
us
you.
for my first guest from Stockholm, Sweden. And I love it.
Yeah,
First,
thank you.
first
Thank you
time,
so
and it
much.
won't be the last. So
No, no, thank you
thank
so much.
you. And to everyone else, we'll see you again real soon. Take good care.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.